never, ever stop. We are one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God. We will make America great again.
Welcome to Team Trump Online. From Washington, D.C., welcome to the 2020 Republican National Convention.
My fellow Americans, tonight, with a heart full of gratitude and boundless optimism, I profoundly accept this nomination for President of the United States.
Just imagine what 2020 would have looked like, fighting for your life without Donald Trump fighting for it too.
I watch him treat janitors, security guards, and waiters the same way he would treat a VIP. He made them feel special.
And this election will decide whether we will defend the American way of life or whether we will allow a radical movement to completely dismantle and destroy it. That won't happen.
The president did what he said he would do. He took action.
But I have news for Joe Biden. We are free. We are free people with free minds.
My hope for America is that formerly incarcerated people will be afforded the opportunity to take advantage of the fact that we live in a nation of second chances.
As I grant John, I'm not sure you know this, a full pardon. So I don't know if you know that, Jamie.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
You're now fellow citizens of the greatest nation on the face of God's earth. Congratulations. We have spent the last 4 years reversing the damage Joe Biden inflicted over the last 47 years. Biden's record is a shameful roll call of the most catastrophic betrayals and blunders in our lifetime. He has spent his entire career on the wrong side of history.
Our daughter Kayla was taken as a hostage and murdered by ISIS.
We endured an agonizing back and forth between us, the Obama administration, and ISIS. We put all our faith in the government, but the government let us down. President Obama refused to meet with us until ISIS had already beheaded other Americans. To this day, we've never heard from Joe Biden.
And this election will decide whether we will defend the American way of life or whether we will allow a radical movement to completely dismantle and destroy it. That won't happen.
And after watching tonight, I said, I'm going to wait for debates, but I'm not. I mean, I have made up my mind. I am definitely going to go for, Donald Trump.
Joe Biden's agenda is made in China. My agenda is made in the USA. When I took bold action to issue a travel ban on China, very early indeed, Joe Biden called it hysterical and xenophobic. If we had listened to Joe, hundreds of thousands more Americans would have died. At the Democrat convention, you barely heard a word about their agenda. But that's not because they don't have one. It's because their agenda is the most extreme set of proposals ever put forward by a major party nominee.
Welcome to the 2020 Democratic National Convention.
Why can't folks imagine a world without the cops? Why can't folks imagine a world without prisons?
I've never felt American.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible.
One nation, indivisible.
With liberty and justice for all. Someday.
This is the most important election in the history of our country. There has never been such a difference between two parties or two individuals in ideology, philosophy, or vision than there is right now. Our opponents believe that America is a depraved nation.
No miracle is coming.
We want our sons and daughters to know the truth. America is the greatest and most exceptional nation in the history of the world. In America, we don't turn to government to restore our souls. We put our faith in Almighty God. What united generations past was an unshakable confidence in America's destiny and an unbreakable faith in the American people. Over the next 4 years, we will prove worthy of this magnificent legacy. We will reach stunning new heights. There is no one like us on earth. Americans have steel in their spines, grit in their souls, and fire in their hearts. For America, nothing is impossible. For America, there is a dream, and it is not beyond your reach. And we will make America greater than ever before. I love you all. God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Black Voices for Trump, Real Talk Online. I'm Katrina Pierson, Senior Advisor to President Trump's re-election campaign, and please be sure to like and share our broadcast with your friends and family. Tonight, I'm joined by founder of the Legacy Republican Alliance and member of the Black Voices for Trump Advisory Board, Corinne Rankin, former NFL team captain, professor, philanthropist, and minister Jack Brewer, and from my home state, member of the Trump Advisory Board and chairman of the Texas House Committee on Corrections, State Representative James White. Hey guys, stay tuned at the end of the show. We have an amazing video for you to see, our version of the real Joe Biden. Thank you everyone for joining, and now let's dive right in. So look guys, the mainstream media is working overtime to coddle Joe Biden and to prop up the Biden-Harris uninspiring ticket as some kind of warriors for justice. And the platform appears to be none other than systemic racism. Now, talk about the irony there. The author and the enforcer of systemic racism are running against, I guess, themselves. Because President Trump has spent his time in office literally undoing the damage caused by failed Democrat policies. And we've all talked about the 1994 crime bill before, but we really cannot overstate just how much damage this has done to communities all across the country. And Jack, first, congratulations on speaking at the Republican National Convention.
Thank you. Honor.
So let's take a step back here because you are very intimate with this particular legislation. You go to prisons, you mentor. So can you explain the impact that this detrimental 1994 crime bill has had on Black America?
It's huge. You know, it's really a tragedy that any particularly Black American, because so many of us, I know like myself, have family members that have been affected by the crime bill and being thrown into jail disproportionately, you know, serving 20, 30, sometimes even receiving life sentences for nonviolent crimes. I mean, when you look at our society right now, and it's particularly the Black community, and you see that so many fathers have been removed from the homes. So the crime bill not only put people in prison, but it took the fathers out of our homes, and by the millions, not 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000. You're talking about millions of Black men removed from the homes. And so, what that has done is that it's really gone through our entire culture and created this population that doesn't have education. You create a population that is suffering right now from cultural issues that are going deeper than our children. If you just look at the numbers and the statistics, 71% of kids that drop out of high school are fatherless. And so what does that mean? You look at all these kids who have fathers that are locked up, of course they're going to be suffering. You look at the poverty rates, you're 6 times more likely to live in poverty if you don't have a father in the home. So when Joe Biden passed that policy, it didn't just lock Black men up, it decimated our families. And we're fighting to get that back right now. And so anyone who really looks at these through open eyes and is being real with themselves will admit that locking up, mass incarcerating Black men is one of the worst acts against Black people really since slavery. And you want to talk about modern day slavery, that's where it is. And that's where it starts, Katrina. And so I just hope that African Americans don't listen to the pandering of Joe Biden, because that's all he's doing to us right now. He tells us exactly what we want to hear, when we want to hear it, where he feels like we want to hear, and tries to play to our emotions. As Black folks, we got to be smarter than that. This man has locked up our fathers and a lot of our mothers, and he's done these things without apologizing. He's unapologetic for his acts, and it's really the definition of evil.
Yeah, you mentioned taking fathers out of the home by the millions, but we never hear Democrats talk about the separation of families when it comes to their policies. And so, Corinne, to that point, do you think that these failures, like the 1994 crime bill, are waking up Black Americans to the false promises that have been made by Democrats for decades?
That's a great question. And I think absolutely it's 100% waking up Black people. I think that also along with that, it's the fact that these tapes are being resurfaced of Joe Biden in the Senate advocating for this legislation, advocating for the policy, where he uses phrases like predators to describe members of the Black community and urban communities. When he says things like, I don't care that they don't grow up in good homes. I don't care that they don't have good education. I don't care that they're poor. I don't want them coming after my mom. I don't want them coming after my sons. So it's just, it's this liberal elitist policy that's creating the haves and the have-nots. And he's basically saying, you don't have, and I don't care that you don't have, you're not going to come and interfere with what I'm doing. And it's just a stark contrast to what we're seeing from President Trump, because what we're seeing from President Trump is, I care that you don't have. I want to lift you up out of poverty. I want to make sure that your families stay together and that the parents have good jobs and good education so that they can provide for their family and can create the family unit so that they will have. And, a lot of the things that's happening in the Black community is that we're really concerned with, generational wealth now. Like to Jack's point earlier, it was modern day slavery, these policies implemented by Joe Biden. So it's really going to take, more work by President Trump. So we have to work hard to get him reelected so that we can have another 4 more years, because look at what he's done in the past 4 years as being president. So just imagine how much further he can take, the Black community and America as a whole going forward with the next 4 years.
Yeah, and that's the importance of the Black Voices for Trump coalition, because for so long, the narrative has been lost. I mean, I'm not surprised that Democrat policies are modern day slavery. I mean, they are the party of slavery. They are the party that tried to prevent women from voting. And again, it was the Republicans that have come through on every aspect to give women the right to vote, to fight for civil rights, always against the Democrats. And so now the narrative, I believe, is on a course correction. And we watched last week at the RNC convention the case for Black Americans to not only just vote for President Trump, get him back in office, but for Republicans as a whole. And, all of these failures were cited throughout the entire week of all of the policies the Democrats have pushed, whether it be for mass incarceration, high taxes, things that keep people in poverty for a very long time. And so following the convention, surprisingly or not, President Trump's poll numbers went up. And you take that week from the DNC of doom and gloom and anger and hate and, disdain for the public and disdain for our president and our country, for that matter, to a positive, uplifting, patriotic, respectful, loving tone for the RNC. And I think a lot of Black and brown voters have woken up, and the president's numbers have gone up in that category 9 points. Representative White, what do you think resonated most with Black voters during that week?
Thank you so much for that question, Katrina. And what I think what resonated is our President Donald Trump's approach to peaceful order and constitutional law for every American citizen. He's going to protect our businesses and our homes that are being ramshacked, by these riotous thugs that are trying to burn down our businesses and our lives. And also the idea that in 1 week, the president showed us how we deliver redemption without sacrificing public safety. When the president stands between a former bank robber and the law enforcement officer that arrested him and put him in prison, he brings them together and he gives that brother a pardon, a presidential pardon, because he's come back out of prison, giving back and helping others revive their lives. And then when you have Alice Johnson, that was locked up for many, many years for a nonviolent drug crime, as Jack talked about. And she talks about not being denied or delayed, but being pardoned by the president and set aside and destined at this time to help more people rise up. I think those were the points that resonated most for many American Blacks and actually brought me to tears watching the president do this throughout the week.
Yeah, you know, you talk about redemption, and we've witnessed the rehabilitation of many Black Americans that the president has intervened on their behalf. And, you know, 2 words that Joe Biden has publicly stated was non-existent for, quote, these people. So let's take a break real quick. We'll be right back with more Black Voices for Trump, Real Talk Online. Stay tuned.
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black, then you ain't black, then you ain't black, then you ain't black.
It was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of 2 United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
Welcome back to Black Voices for Trump, Real Talk Online. I'm Katrina Pierson, and back with us are Corinne Rankin, State Representative James White, and Jack Brewer. So in the last week, we have seen a new surge of urban violence that has descended on liberal cities, and the media continues to gaslight the public about these riots, calling them mostly peaceful. Now, we have heard a slight shift in the tone of Biden and Harris coming out of the Republican convention, but since that alternative reality seems to be growing more difficult to convince the American people that these are peaceful protests, Joe Biden has come out of the basement after 3 months of silence and, you know, hasn't decided to call for the violence to end until like yesterday. So the media has gone from calling the violence to peaceful, blaming President Trump now, which is crazy to me because we do have, let's see, Black Lives Matter began under Obama, Biden. The riots in Baltimore, Obama, Biden. Ferguson riots, Obama, Biden. So Jack, this new maneuver that they've started is trying to blame President Trump for the unrest, even after he's offered to send the National Guard into some of these cities like Milwaukee and Kenosha, and has stopped some of this out for the most part. So is this just another hoax they're going to try to push on the president, or what do you think is going on here?
Man, it makes you laugh when you see how they can really change their message just at the drop of a dime. I mean, you look at, you hear the recordings, or you watch previous interviews from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, where they're actually paying for these rioters to get out of jail. They're putting their own money. They're advising their campaigns to help donate money to get these thugs out of jail. It is unbelievable to have a presidential candidate to be so bold and really to take advantage of the American people with their hypocrisy. It's really sad and it's revealing. And you see, when I look out, even when I look at some of these things that are happening in the streets, I'm looking at these kids saying to myself, where are their dads?
Yeah.
If you're going to be a president of the United States, you should be a father figure for this nation. When you see kids out here burning up churches and folks burning up buildings and being arsonists in our communities, the first thing you should think about is how they should get slapped upside their head as a father. And this is sad to have a president that's going to appease, like a Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They're appeasing this type of behavior, which means that they're actually encouraging it and encouraging these people to act this way. We have a fatherless crisis, and we talked about this previously. We have a fatherless crisis. The kids that you see out there burning up stuff in these streets, the majority of them do not have fathers. That's the reason why you're 20 times more likely to go to prison if you don't have a father. The kids that are having the run-ins with the police officers are usually the fatherless kids. We have to all wake up as a nation. We need a father figure like President Trump. We don't need an appeaser like Joe Biden.
Yeah, and it's sort of backwards land, Jack, when you talk about the fatherlessness and the impact that it has, in communities. And you have this organization, Black Lives Matter, that actually promotes dismantling the nuclear family. So these things just really are not making sense. And so Representative White, listen to this. So Joe Biden actually came out and said that he would not send in the National Guard if president. And could you imagine what would have happened in these communities had they had not been sent in? And what would the nation look like if we continue to allow these leaders who capitulate to socialism and Marxism and communism fester in our country?
Katrina, unconstitutional and unfortunate. One of the reasons we have our Constitution today was to provide the president, provide the federal government with the tools and the resources to respond to this type of violence. Unfortunate, because I think about those young Black children that were marching through those riotous mobs, just trying to get an education in Little Rock, and to think that Biden wanting to be president wouldn't send in the National Guard to help them, wouldn't send in the National Guard to help the civil rights marchers marching to their capital for the right to vote. And just a plain slap in the face to not only American Blacks, but Americans overall, to say that if you have riotous leftist mobs ransacking your town, your businesses, your homes, your schools, someone that wants to be president is not going to even lift a finger. Unfortunate, unconstitutional, and a slap in the face.
It's also reckless and irresponsible when you think about it. And Corinne, let's talk about the fake news media, along these lines. And, I mentioned Ferguson and Baltimore and Black Lives Matter founding, and, Obama and Biden did nothing. The administration had plenty of opportunities to, bring to the forefront the issues that have been plaguing Black America for so long. They had opportunities to implement reform, and they didn't. Systematic racism, negative. Corinne, what do you think the media will accomplish by trying to pretend that this all just somehow began in the last 4 years and just really ignore the last half century, really? Do you think they're going to be successful at all in convincing Black America that this is just brand new?
Well, I think that they have been successful in the past, and that's why they're continuing to do it this time. I think that this time around in 2020, that Americans are waking up to the fact that this is orchestrated to a large degree, and that there was an ample opportunity for the Obama-Biden administration to do something about it during the 8 years they were in office, or in Joe Biden in his 50 years of public service has done absolutely nothing to end systemic racism. So I think the American public is waking up to the fact that they've done nothing in the past, and if you vote for them again, they will continue to do nothing. The reason why, in my opinion, the reason why they're doing these riots is for plain and simple votes. They're trying to trick the American people into thinking that all of these riots are because of President Trump, which by now the Americans know that's not the case. It's no secret that none of these rioters and protesters are Trump supporting people. They are out there to specifically wreak havoc on communities. And my thoughts just keep harkening back to Kamala Harris saying, in an interview that these riots aren't going to stop, and nor should they stop, basically. And she says this with, the slightest smile or smirk on her face, as if she agrees with what's going on. And this is plain and simple bullying tactics. It's just another way of saying, vote for us or we will continue to wreak havoc on your neighborhoods. And I think those statements alone and that sentiment alone is really resonating with Americans. I mean, they have no plan for the future. They have nothing but a doom and gloom outlook on America. So instead of them coming up with something that's going to uplift Americans and create unity, they're basically bullying us to say, if you don't vote for us and if you don't put us into power, we're going to continue to wreak havoc on our neighborhoods. So if that's what they're doing now, God forbid what would happen if they were to actually ever be in power.
Yeah, we also know that there is some organized chaos to the chaos, and their silence is consent. When this all began, they had plenty of opportunities to come out and denounce the violence, and instead, many on the campaign staff actually voted to get some of these thugs and criminals out of jail. So here we go again. We have 60 some odd days left. Things are growing more and more intense, and the president is doing his absolute best at leadership, quelling some of the violence when it arrives, and he actually implemented some of these policies long before the George Floyd case even happened. So many Americans are now finding out that our president has been on top of it long before any of this happened, which means he was actually leading on these issues while Joe Biden and Barack Obama did absolutely nothing. So thank you all for your commentary. We're going to take one more commercial break, and we'll be right back with more Black Voices for Trump, Real Talk Online.
Kamala Harris ran for president by rushing to the radical left, embracing Bernie's plan for socialized medicine, calling for trillions in new taxes, attacking Joe Biden for racist policies. Voters rejected Harris. They smartly spotted a phony. But not Joe Biden. He's not that smart. Biden calls himself a transition candidate. He is handing over the reins to Kamala while they jointly embrace the radical left. Slow Joe and phony Kamala. Perfect together. Wrong for America.
Hey everyone, David J. Harris Jr. here. Now, the liberal mainstream media will stop at nothing to continue to push out fake news, making up lies about our president. Well, we are here to put a stop to that.
And welcome back to Black Voices for Trump, Real Talk Online with State Representative James White, Jack Brewer, and Corinne Rankin. Now, after decades of politicians promising criminal justice reform, only President Trump kept his promise, and with the First Step Act launched meaningful generational change in the criminal justice system. And State Representative White, we have all also heard about the pardon of Alice Johnson. We talked about it earlier, but how else has President Trump brought stakeholders really from both Black communities and law enforcement together to promote reform both in the criminal justice system and in policing in general?
Thank you so much. And look, this president has a more expansive and effective way when we look at criminal justice compared to Biden and Harris. As Jack stated earlier in this segment or in this show, Biden's big government grab approach with just throwing, many people in prison, even for non-violent crimes, wrecked Black families. Kamala Harris, as a prosecutor and attorney general of the state, backed legislation to put mothers in jail for 180 days over truancy. Very cavalier, very non-compassionate. The Trump approach, law and order, constitutional law, peaceful order, the great executive order that he signed that will give the Attorney General of the United States and the Justice Department tools to start reforms in our police department, forbid and prohibit these practices of chokeholds, making sure that our police departments have certifications and training from third party sources, and making sure that that is robust. But I also have to add this, Katrina, because as chair of the House Committee on Corrections, yes, I have a lot of focus on the rehabilitation and incarceration of people who are convicted of felonies in the state of Texas. But this is what I also know about criminal justice reform. You need a strong economy and you need very effective education. And this president understands that by making sure that our pre-COVID unemployment rate for all Americans, and particularly American blacks, was the lowest in history. Opportunity zones to bring more opportunity and economic vitality, where you have the legal economy coming in and crowding out the criminal element in the criminal economy. And the idea about having all the great effective educational tools and educational choices on the table for parents and students to choose from, to make sure that they're able to uplift from poverty to prosperity.
Yeah, you know, it's truly amazing how much President Trump has been able to do with just one term. And that's why it's so important to get another 4 years of these uplifting and empowering policies. And Corinne, while the president has been uplifting the Black community, Democrats continue to do the opposite. So why are the Democrats and the media continuing to politicize the pain of Black people to their benefit? And do you think it's going to work?
I don't think it's going to work this time. And the reason why they're doing it is plain and simple, once again, votes. It's the only way they know how to get votes. As a Californian, I live in a deep blue Democratic state, and I've seen this happen time and time again for years now. This is the Democrat playbook. Just play on people's feelings, play on your emotions. And, you know, if you want change, they'd rather erect a monument instead of enacting real change in communities. You know, it's important for us to remember, and I know this is on the president's mind too, that in this BLM movement, not the Black Lives Matter organization per se, but in the movement, there are real families, real moms and dads and children who really want real change in the communities, real change in policing. And what we've seen with this president is that he's brought both sides together. He brings police officers along with community members and enacts real change, real policies that can benefit communities. You know, not everyone is the rioting, looting actors who's destroying neighborhoods. And, you know, I will say that as a former bail bondsman, it's not lost on me that these riots are happening in states like Wisconsin and Oregon, which are no bail, no surety bail states. So all the bail that they're paying is going straight to the state. There's no family members involved, no bondsmen involved, no one to make sure that these people are going to court and are being held to answer before a judge. So, you know, once again, it's important to remember, and I think that the American people are waking up to the Democrat policies, something that I've seen, like I said, in California for many years. And I honestly, in a certain way, I'm glad that this is becoming, you know, more nationally known, so that more people can see just the harmful policies and, you know, basically the flat out lies that the Democrats tell the American people.
Yeah, Corinne, you make a great point about the bail. I mean, it's like a magnet for crime. You know, you can go do the crime because you're not going to do the time. And New York is finding that out, you know, in many ways. And my heart aches for the people in these communities who truly are essentially trapped with the economic impact, leaving them unable to really move the way that they normally would have been able to, you know, prior to the Chinese virus coming into the country. And you know, Jack, enough can't be said about the work that you've been doing in the prison system and empowering people and educating people. And, you know, now that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have finally stepped up to call to an end to the violence, which, we didn't hear any of that during their national convention, but, they stepped up today. So let's talk about that. They were silent and now they're speaking, which is quite strange also because Kamala Harris actually retweeted a link to a GoFundMe that bailed out some of these rioters. Some of these people have shot at police, been accused of murder, twice convicted sex offenders, and this Minnesota Freedom Fund and these other local, state, and federal Democrats have encouraged this lawlessness. So, Jack, what else can you give us outside of, why people are doing this? We talked about the fatherlessness. And one of the things that I always say when discussing institutional racism is the education system. And that's something else that President Trump is a staunch fighter for. So what do you have to say on that, since you're actually in the middle of this and the expert on the panel?
They're making a mockery out of us. And it's sad. Black America needs to wake up. They're really making a mockery out of the black race. I don't want to go keep talking about race all the time, but Kamala Harris was Indian 10 years ago. Now she's black as she's running for vice president. So if that doesn't wake you up and tell you what's really behind her message, and I don't know what else will. But when you look at our education system, it's really a sad situation that's going on because they're making the victims that they want us to be. They want us to think of ourselves as victims. And our school systems are doing just that. Whenever you have school systems, and majority of these are ran by Democrats, in Democratic cities and Democratic strongholds, the majority of these school systems are spending between $20,000 and $25,000 per kid per school year. Well, I send my kid to a top Christian school for $12,000 a year. So they're spending more than twice as much as it costs to send the kid to a quality private school, quality Christian school. And the reason why is because they're appeasing to these unions, and they're appeasing to these folks within these communities, these Democratic leaders that are running these inner cities and running these urban areas to the detriment of our children. They're misappropriating funds, and President Donald J. Trump is standing against this. But it's a lot. Parents, we got to wake up. We are not victims. We are children of God. If you are not raising your kid to believe that they're a child of God and that no weapon formed against them will prosper, then who else can help us? We have to teach our kids that they are not victims. We live in the greatest country in the world. Look around you. Look at every other country. Everyone wants to come here to America. Black folks have to stop playing this victim card, right? We need to start spanking our kids again and making sure they act right. When I look out amongst these kids out there in these streets, we all should be saying the same thing. Where are their dads? And we got to get to the point where we can really look at each other and hold each other accountable again. We're letting our culture, we're becoming the mockery of America. At some point, some of these people are going to get tired of us. Some of these people are going to get tired of us every time they turn on their TV.
If not already.
Yeah, if not already. Every time, Katrina, every time they turn on their TV, what are they seeing? They're seeing black men resisting arrest. They're seeing black men disrespecting a police officer. They're seeing black men disrespecting their teachers. That's why they're locking us up. We have to respect authority, law and order, and get back to having principles again. I know that 30, 40 years ago, when our parents grew up, it wasn't like this because we respected each other. And most importantly, we respected ourselves.
When you look back at some of those images, back when times truly were very much imbalanced and, Black Americans were treated very poorly. Even then, though, Jack, to your point, our kids, our sons still respected their elders, dressed appropriately, got an education. And it's just so far gone because of these terrible Democrat policies. And, one of the things as a single Black mom, I used to tell my son all the time growing up, if you ever have an interaction with a police officer, you just do as they say. And if there are any issues, I'll deal with that when I get there. And, that's just what everyone should do when you're dealing with an authority figure, because they are the authority figure. If your rights are being violated, we can get to that. But let's get you there first and do your part. So to your point, you're absolutely right. These things don't just happen by accident. I love my police department, but I'll also acknowledge that there are some who are out there that, aren't following their own rules and guidelines. And when that happens, you have to be able to make the case. So, again, we're back to a parenting issue. We're back to an education issue. And so hopefully moving forward, we can continue to highlight the causes from some of this and not just deal with things on the surface. So thank you all for your insights.
Hey,
I'd like to get go ahead, Jack.
Sorry, y'all know me. I get about some of these things because it drives me crazy.
Yeah.
But look at what our kids are putting into their minds and what really the Democratic Party is promoting. You're never going to see Donald Trump have someone like Cardi B representing him, speaking to him to be his people. Cardi B is the most high-profile stripper that we have in America. And so now we have a Democratic Party that was stoop as low. It doesn't matter to them. They don't care. They don't have a conscience. They don't care about bringing character and putting character into these black kids. They want these kids to listen to the Ice Cubes and to the Snoop Dogs that are telling them to gang bang in our streets. They want our kids to hear this type of music. They praise these type of people. They want athletes like LeBron James to tell our children that they're victim and to tell their children that they live in the most racist country in the world. Those are the athletes they want to put. President Trump puts athletes like Herschel Walker on his screen, dignified men that represent God.
And Jack Brewer.
Well, thank you. But I'm just saying, like, if you want to see the contrast, it's right before your eyes, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a great point. I mean, Hollywood, when you look at culture, right? I used to teach my son and his kids that the music you're listening to was all chosen by, white liberals. This is the way they wanted you to act. This is the way they wanted you to speak. And sure enough, it works because it's all in the culture. But I do see a change coming. And I see it in my son's generation, believe it or not. They're very much independent thinkers and can recognize when they're being fooled. And I find that to be fascinating. So many people are worried about the generation behind us. I'm not, because I've witnessed it firsthand. These young people get it. Millennials, not so much. But the ones behind them, I think they get it, and they're going to be the saving grace for our country. But I want to get your final thoughts, guys. So before we do that, I want to talk about what you can do at home to get involved to ensure that we re-elect President Donald Trump, because the election is only a couple of months away, and there's still so much you can do from home to help. If you, your friends, family, or neighbors want to get involved in the fight to re-elect President Trump, please sign up at armyfortrump.com. And to stay in touch with the campaign, text Trump to 88022. And if you'd like to get involved with the Black Voices for Trump Coalition, the largest coalition on the Trump campaign, text WOKE to 88022. And finally, make sure that you're registered to vote. Deadlines are approaching, and all of your hard work rests on our ability to mobilize and get out the vote. Go to donald.trump.com or text VOTE to 88022 to make sure you are registered and have all of the information you need to make sure that your voice is heard at the ballot box. All right, guys, let's get down to it. Final thoughts. James, let's start with you.
Thank you so much for that, Katrina. And I want to thank Jack and Corrine, especially listening to Jack, his truth to power. It just fires me up. Makes me want to get my football coach whistle back on. Get back out there. But Katrina, I am so proud to stand along with this president and support him in his reelection. He truly cares about each and every Black life. And I think he's even said that. He cares about each and every Black life, from preborn in the womb to young child in the classroom to young man on the streets, whether it's in Chicago or Houston or here in East Texas, on to the time when you have your home going and you go back to the Lord. I am so proud of my district. Every day almost, I'm seeing Facebook posts about, boat flotillas for Trump. I got a lot of water out this way. Okay. Convoy vehicles for Trump. Meet over here for flags and Donald J. Trump for president posters. Look, I don't get focused on a lot of these fake polls, There is a lot of enthusiasm for this president, and it's going to show. So I'm telling everyone out there to get on the Trump train. Katrina, you know, you and I together have been involved in politics for a long time. Yes, usually politicians are able to tell you what may happen, but this election, it's like in real time. Disturbance and division, Democrats on your street, or unity and prosperity in your community with Trump. I mean, it's just like night and day. You don't have to wonder. You know, it's not a philosophy. It is in real time. So if you want unity, prosperity, strength, America being first again and always, I would ask you to join us on Black Voices for Trump. Let's get behind our president. Let's get another 4 years. Let's lift up, not lock up, and we'll have a great time over the next 4 years.
That's right. The enthusiasm is so real. We've been all over the country already. There are 2 bus tours, a Team Trump bus, the red bus, and the Women for Trump pink bus out there coming to a town near you. Go to donald.trump.com/events to come and see us. Corinne, your final thoughts.
Well, first of all, Katrina, thank you so much for having me on this evening. I want to say that, once again, that if you want to get involved with the campaign, that, you know, and if you're living in California, you can always go and volunteer to help out in Nevada. I was just on the Women's for Trump bus tour in Nevada, and I can tell you that on the ground, they are fired up. Every stop we went to was just packed to, it was standing room only. Those volunteers are just, they're excited. They're ready to get out there. So for Californians who feel like there's, you know, what can you do? Please get involved in other states. You can make phone calls. You can help them walk precincts. And, you know, I love to say, in the words of the California governor, Gavin Newsom, when referring to President Trump, promises made, promises kept. So even our very own governor has given President Trump just the best praise you can possibly bring. And, you know, well, I'm so proud to be a member of this campaign, because the grace and the dignity that we're seeing coming out of this administration, the ability to get things done, to make promises, to be committed, and to make good on those promises is something that America hasn't seen in a long time. And I'm really looking forward to another 4 more years of, again, promises made, promises kept. You know, and if you're living in California, let me tell you, I'm seeing so many new people that are getting excited about President Trump. We have a boat parade that's going on in San Diego this weekend, and one that's coming out of Stockton this weekend. Even I'm seeing remnants in the Silicon Valley of overhead pass with people with big Trump signs. So we may be slow moving and slow getting around here in California, but I guarantee we are coming around.
Yeah, Jack, you know, it's true. It's undeniable the results that our president has been able to accomplish. What are your final thoughts this evening?
I'll tell you what, the last week has been emotional for me, just because I've been overwhelmed with so much support after the RNC, and even during the RNC. My mailbox was full, and I couldn't get through all the messages. And I'll tell you what, a lot of people that, you know, 6 months ago would talk bad about President Trump, all of a sudden they've got on the right train.
Yeah.
So that has been really motivating for me, and I know that we're on the right side of history. And if I have one message for people listening, it's to all those mothers out there, particularly those black and brown mothers whose kids are stuck in these schools that are failing them. This president is standing up for school choice. And this is not some political talking point. This is not something that we're trying to talk about to get votes. This is truly going to really determine where our kids end up. This is going to determine whether or not our kids are able to advance themselves and become the future generation that we all know they can become. When you look at places like Baltimore, that has 38 schools that are 0% proficient in reading and math, You have places in schools throughout Detroit that are 4% proficient in reading and math statewide. These things are tragic, and we have to take a stand. Just like Dr. King and so many others fought back in the civil rights movement, this is our civil rights movement of the day. Our kids are being locked up into these broken public schools, and no one's fighting for their choice to be made. We have our government system paying $25,000 per child. Why can't we give you a voucher for that? Why can't we give you a choice of where that $25,000 is paid? Why can't your kids go to a great public school that is actually working? Why can't your kid go to a great religious institution or a charter school of your choice? Come on, ladies and gentlemen. We can't let them play with our kids' futures any longer. This is not right. We all know it. It makes sense. This is not about the politics. And so I just pray for our nation. And I just ask everybody who's listening right now, even if it's not even your kid, if you know of other folks that are being locked up and stuck into these failing school systems, go educate them. Go tell them about school choice. Go tell them the statistics and the reason why their kids are going to schools that don't work. It has nothing to do with money. I feel terrible because I have the resources to put my kid in a good school. Why shouldn't you? Everyone should. The money is there. We're spending the money anyway. And so I just say we have to all lock arms and come together and unite and get back to serving. We don't vote on a president so he can have all the answers and fix everything. He needs us to help him out too. We have to do our part. We have to actually go out and care and serve and go into the community and push for these things that we know are right. That's how we effectuate change. We effectuate change not by speaking the words, but by doing it with our hands, living our words through the work of our hands. That's what we need to do. And that's going to take each one of us going out, knocking on doors, calling friends, and educating them on these real issues that are keeping our kids shackled up. Enough is enough. Let's bring respect back to Black America. Let's bring it back, and we can do it together. God bless you.
Thank you so much for that insight, Jack. Why don't you please offer a prayer for us to close the show?
Definitely. Thank you. Heavenly Father, I just pray for our nation. I just ask everyone who's watching this show right now, I want them to pray for you, Katrina, as you taking such bold leadership in running this Black Voices and really speaking truth to the world. A lot of times didn't want to hear it. Dear God, bless everyone who's a part of this movement and part of this campaign. Dear God, we ask that you put your hand over our president, and we call upon the blood of Jesus to just bring us all protection, dear God. And we just want to just say thank you for allowing us to live in the greatest country on earth. And we just ask for your strength as we go through this election. And we just pray that truth come to the minds of all Americans. And we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for that, Jack. You know, as we continue to pray for our nation and our president, I have a great feeling that the light is at the end of the tunnel here with another 4 years of President Trump. So thank you all for joining us this evening, and thank you to everyone at home for tuning in. Tune in 7 nights a week for more Team Trump Online, and check out our online schedule for the next episode of Black Voices for Trump, Real Talk Online. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you next time. And now stay tuned for our version of the real Joe Biden.
The moment has come for our nation to deal with systemic racism.
What exactly is systemic racism or institutional racism? Individual racism is obvious. Systemic racism, however, is far more subtle, and it originates in the operation of established and respected forces in the society and thus receives far less public condemnation. Systemic racism is when Black and brown citizens are kept trapped in lower society by privileged elitists in order to maintain power by creating a permanent second class of people. Systemic racism is the 1994 crime bill.
Biden's 1994 crime bill helped fuel
mass incarceration with financial incentives to keep people behind bars.
Biden's record in the Senate actually reflects very racist legislation.
Biden has made it a death penalty offense for everything but jaywalking. I like the idea they keep in jail longer. I'm the guy that wrote the bill.
Systemic racism is knowing full well that people trapped in poverty cannot afford lawyers to fight back against false allegations.
It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter whether or not they had no background that enabled them to become socialized into the fabric of society.
It's breaking up families and creating entire generations of fatherless children.
The founder of Planned Parenthood was a eugenicist. Birth control, said Margaret Sanger, must lead ultimately to a cleaner race. We don't want the word to get out, Sanger said, that we want to exterminate the Negro population.
It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife.
Instead of building back better, systemic racism is deeming a community as an unfit, unsocialized group of people who cannot be rehabilitated.
We don't very well know how to rehabilitate them at that point. That's the sad truth. We have predators on our streets. They are beyond the pale, many of those people. Beyond the pale. We have no choice but to take them out of society.
Systemic racism is when you deprive generations of children from a quality education.
If I'm president, Betsy DeVos's whole notion from charter schools to this are gone.
It's when your own running mate calls you out for supporting institutional racism.
I was actually it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country.
Biden sought and received support from Mississippi Senator James Eastland. He frequently spoke of blacks as, quote, an inferior race.
And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing.
Do you think that his remarks about segregation as senators and his past policy on busing effectively disqualify him as a candidate?
I think the voters will decide whether he is qualified to run or serve.
Systemic racism is when you are a vice president to the first black president and preserved the unjust system.
The Black Lives Matter movement emerged under a black president, black attorney general, and black Homeland Security, and they couldn't deliver. You see?
I'm like the token black.
So I learned about roaches. Unlike the African-American community, the Latino community is an incredibly diverse community.
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black. They're going to put you all back in chains.
Joe Biden can't change the system. He is the system. But President Trump has begun to dismantle Joe Biden's systemically racist 47-year career. He signed criminal justice reform into law, increased and secured permanent funding for historically black colleges and universities. He fights for school choice, and President Trump took the lead on police reform last year. All of the issues that President Obama neglected and the policies that Biden could have changed in nearly a half a century in Washington.
America's ready of rooting out our systemic racism.
We agree, Joe. That's why you have to go. Systematic racism ends when Joe Biden is retired from public office.
You ain't black. You ain't black.